All right, let's just cut right to the chase. The financial stakes of modern SaaS growth have literally never been higher, and there's a very good chance your current onboarding process is bleeding your revenue dry. Welcome to this explainer on gamified SaaS onboarding. Today, we're diving deep into the undeniable data that shows exactly how top-performing companies are completely rethinking the way they welcome new users. So, let's peel back the layers and expose what's really happening beneath the surface of the SaaS industry right now. Think about it like this. In the B2C consumer world, if you lose a trial user, it costs you what? A $9.99 a month subscription? It's annoying, sure, but you survive. But in the B2B SaaS world, a single failed onboarding experience doesn't just cost you a few bucks. We're talking about a staggering $30,000 in annual recurring revenue just vanishing. And worse, it completely burns through 6 months of incredibly expensive sales effort. In B2B, every single drop-off is an absolute catastrophe for your bottom line. So put yourself in your user's shoes for a second and ask yourself honestly, what does a new customer actually experience when they log into your product for the very first time? Are they greeted by a totally blank dashboard? Or maybe you're hitting them with a generic 5-step product tour that just dumps a ton of information on them all at once. Let's be real. Users treat those tours exactly like terms and conditions. They just instinctively click skip. You aren't activating them, you're overwhelming them, and then they're just closing the tab. Now, to really grasp why fixing this is practically a life or death situation for your product today, we have to look at the stark reality of the 2026 market. That whole growth at all costs era, yeah, that is officially dead. You can no longer just buy your way out of a leaky bucket. Boards and investors have completely shifted their focus towards sustainable efficiency and capital-efficient growth. We are smack in the middle of a massive customer acquisition cost crisis. To put that crisis into perspective, the median customer acquisition cost, or CAC, has surged to $1,200 per customer. Because of that massive upfront expense, the blended CAC payback period for SaaS companies has stretched out to a really painful 18 months. Think about that math for a second. You are fronting $1,200 and then waiting a year and a half just to break even on that one single user. And why is acquisition so unbelievably expensive right now? Well, look no further than skyrocketing ad costs. Since 2019, Google Ads costs have shot up by 164%, and LinkedIn Ads, which is basically the bread and butter for B2B targeting, has surged by 89%. It's mathematically impossible to survive high churn when your top-of-funnel acquisition is this expensive. The budget is just bleeding out. Which brings us to the exact failure point in the whole system. You spend all this money, you capture this great high-intent demand, you actually win the grueling sales cycle, and then you lose them inside the product. The onboarding failure is exactly where your expensive acquisition budget goes to die. If you don't connect them to the value of your product almost immediately, that $1,200 you spent getting them there, it's gone forever. The contrast in churn dynamics between these markets is actually pretty fascinating. In B2C SaaS, you generally see higher monthly churn, usually sitting around 6.5 to 8%. Now, B2B churn looks a lot safer on paper, hovering around 3.5%. But please don't let those smaller percentages fool you. Because of those massive enterprise price tags and the lengthy sales cycles we just talked about, every single fraction of a percent in B2B represents millions of dollars at scale. Okay, so why exactly are they leaving? If we break down the churn data, we basically see two categories. First, you have involuntary churn, things like failed payments and expired credit cards. That accounts for 20 to 40% of all churn, and you can honestly fix a lot of that with automated billing software. But look at that massive 60 to 80% chunk. That is voluntary churn. That means users are actively deciding your product isn't worth it. They are logging in, looking around, and consciously choosing to walk away. To stop this bleeding, we have to fundamentally reframe how we view the very beginning of the customer relationship. You really need to view those first 90 days not as some casual transition period, but as a strict survival threshold for your product. Most churn during this specific window stems directly from delayed time to value. If they don't have their aha moment quickly, they're gone. The data clearly shows that structured, automated check-ins act as a vital safety net. Instead of just leaving new users to wander around aimlessly, you trigger a specific check-in at day 14 to catch any early friction. By day 30, you're pushing context-specific feature adoption, and at day 90, you lock in steady usage. And to be clear, this isn't about sending a generic welcome newsletter. This is about highly relevant, context-driven nudges. And if you want a massive survival stat to take back to your product team today, here it is. The number 3. Customers who connect 3 or more integrations during this 90-day window are significantly less likely to churn compared to standalone users. Your onboarding shouldn't just be showing them where the menu buttons are, it should actively drive them to weave your product right into their existing tech stack. But how do you actually get them to integrate your product into their stack without boring them to tears? Enter the 2026 Cure to the Leaky Bucket, gamification and interactive activation. We are officially ditching those static, lifeless tutorials and boring landing pages. High-performing SaaS companies are shifting heavily to gamified, interactive experiences that actually reward users for taking the exact steps that lead to retention. The difference in user behavior when you do this is honestly night and day. A standard run-of-the-mill landing page or tutorial is going to see a pretty dismal bounce rate, usually around 60 to 80%. But when you look at gamified SaaS campaigns, like the ones built by platforms such as AdAct for their SMB clients, they are seeing an unbelievable 96% completion rate. By tapping into basic human psychology, you aren't just begging users to read a manual, you're actively driving them to complete key tasks. The core philosophy driving this shift is actually pretty simple. I love this quote. MarTech buyers are exhausted by feature lists. They pay for results. You literally cannot just list 50 things your software does and expect the user to care anymore. Interactive mechanics capture high-intent demand so effectively because they shift the whole focus away from trying to persuade and toward guided, engaging product education. Okay, but once you've hooked them with some gamified interactions, you have to actually deliver on that promise inside the software. And that means implementing role-based contextual guidance. Think about it. A customer success manager needs entirely different features than a support agent on day one, right? Serving them both the exact same welcome tour is a guaranteed way to lose at least one of them. So in 2026, a high-performing B2B onboarding flow is a seamless 3-part journey. It begins with role-based paths, customizing the UI the actual second they tell you who they are. From there, you provide contextual in-app guidance, meaning you never show them a feature until they actually need it in their natural workflow. And finally, you back the whole thing up with self-updating knowledge bases, because outdated documentation is a massive churn signal. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how you pull this off. You tailor those dashboards immediately. You trigger help only when needed. But this last part, this is fascinating. You can now use AI to generate your knowledge base straight from your recurring support tickets. Platforms like Helply are doing this right now, generating and maintaining docs automatically for just $4.99 per article. Your guides literally never fall behind your product updates again because the actual product usage is feeding the docs. It's brilliant. And the results of doing this are undeniable. Deploying these behavior-triggered nudges alongside AI-driven early risk detection that scans for churn language in support tickets can reduce your monthly churn by up to 2 to 3 percentage points. Now, in a mature SaaS business, saving 3% of your ARR every single month, that is literally the difference between a mediocre valuation and becoming a unicorn. All right, so as founders and product managers, how do we actually measure the success of these new interactive onboarding strategies? Most SaaS dashboards track, 15 or 20 different vanity metrics? You need to clear out all that noise and pivot to the metrics that actually matter, the ones that boards and investors are ruthlessly scrutinizing this year. These are the 3 vital numbers that dictate survival. First, a CAC payback period of under 12 months, which proves top-tier efficiency. Second, gross margins staying fiercely above 75%. And crucially, your net revenue retention, or NRR, sitting strictly above a 101% baseline. Net revenue retention really is your absolute North Star metric here. It beautifully captures your retention, your expansion revenue, and your core product value all wrapped up in a single number. It totally removes the dependency on wildly expensive new logo acquisition. And guess what? The companies using gamified onboarding and AI-driven support to push their NRR above 120%, those are the exact ones securing those premium 25x valuation multiples today. Which leaves us with this final, really critical question to evaluate your own product. Is your onboarding just a tour, or is it an outcome? Because if you're still relying on generic walkthroughs, you are actively burning your acquisition budget. It's time to build an experience that activates users instantly, connects them to value, and secures that long-term retention. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and I highly recommend you go take a really hard look at your own first 90 days.